And joining us now live to discuss this week's key meetings on the Russia-Ukraine war is Bill Walton. He's a political analyst and host of the Bill Walton Show. Bill, thanks for joining us this morning. What's your reaction to the format that Trump has a call with Zelenskyy and the EU leaders today, and then immediately after the one-on-one meeting between Trump and Putin, he then gets back on the phone with them?
Well, I think this is to avoid in the first place, it's highly unusual for a U.S. president to meet with a leader of the Soviet Union or Russia or China one-on-one without lots of preparation and plenty of staffing and lots of documents pre-planned to negotiate. This is President Trump freelancing, and he's very good at that. But to do that, he's leaving a couple players out of the room, namely the country that Russia's invaded, Ukraine, and then Europe. And NATO has a keen interest in this. And the dynamics are interesting because there are many players in Europe that are steadfastly saying, we've got to keep fighting. We can't cease fire. This is a battle to the end. And Zelenskyy in Ukraine is saying pretty much the same thing. Wait, not pretty much. He is saying the same thing. And, to step back a little bit, this war has been characterized by a lot of atrocities, a lot of things that have happened where the Russians have been torturing Ukrainians, although the other side is also true. The Ukrainians are guilty of it as well. So this is not just sort of, playing some board game where we're trading land. We're actually trading people. So this negotiation is going to be very interesting to see what Trump does on Friday with Putin.
Yeah, I think you bring up a really important point that beyond all the politics, that this has been a brutal and costly war, and there's been biological weapons used. Now, when Caroline Levitt was asked why Zelenskyy was not invited to the summit yesterday, she said that the meeting was arranged at Putin's request, and Trump agreed, hoping to walk away with a better understanding of how we can end the war. And she described the summit for Trump as a listening exercise. So what are your reactions to that?
Well, I think that's right. And none of us can forget that scene in the Oval Office when Zelenskyy came in to talk with Trump, and they'd worked out a deal beforehand, which is common in the state level negotiations. And Zelenskyy changed the discussion in mid sentence, and they ended up with one of the most entertaining fights we've seen. I think Trump doesn't want to see that repeated with Putin in the room, which is why he didn't want to have Zelenskyy there. And I think also that's genuine. I mean, Donald's a New York dealmaker, and he wants to feel this out. He wants to feel the other side. He wants to see what Putin's really up to. And I think he said, I'm going to know in the first 2 minutes whether Putin is serious about a negotiation or not. And so he needs to have that before we start getting formal with settlements, if that's indeed possible.
Yeah, I think you bring up a really interesting point about that fiery meeting that we all witnessed in the White House, but that was not according to plan, and that potentially for Trump showed that, because of the passions or other reasons, Zelenskyy, may not be steady at that moment where he needs him to be steady. And so, I'd like to then get your view on why a one-on-one meeting format. Why did Trump agree to that? And why is that even like the appropriate next step?
Well, I personally spent an awful lot of time in the merger and acquisition deal business in New York, and both as an intermediary and as a private equity investor. And you can accomplish an awful lot if it's just one-on-one and you don't have a lot of staff sitting there listening in, and you can feel each other out. And I think in the end, either whether it's a business deal or a state-to-state deal, it's personal. And you have to know what the other leaders are about, and you can accomplish that in that format, and you can't do it with a lot of 40 people in the room. So I think it's a smart move, and there's not much downside for us because in the United States, is in a position now where Europe is paying for a lot of what Zelenskyy is using to fight the war. We're not directly involved. I think the polling in America is that a lot of us are tired of the war and would like to see this brought to an end. We're tired of the killing. So Trump's got emotion on his side, and we'll the one-on-one, I think, is very shrewd.
And Bill, as we finish up, I'd like to get your view on Zelenskyy kind of ramping up the rhetoric, but potentially appropriately, that Putin is just trying to drag this out because he was about to get those secondary sanctions? And then also, is Putin trying to drag this out? And why do you think they chose Alaska as the venue?
I think it's highly symbolic. Didn't we buy Alaska from the Russians? It's the one place on the continent where we touch, or in the world where we touch each other, and it's an interesting middle territory between Russia and the United States. And I thought that was clever.
And is Putin slow dragging this out?
We don't know Putin's mind. We've read dozens of books and watched videos, and he's a KGB guy, and they know how to, they're trained in a negotiation to read body language, and we saw that body language at work with Tucker Carlson in that interview. We just don't know. He has pressures at home on both sides. I mean, there are people who think Russia ought to be tougher and raise the stakes and taking all of Ukraine, and then there are an awful lot of people, maybe a majority, that would like to see this end. And of course, they're also hemorrhaging a lot of manpower. A lot of people leaving Russia because they don't want to be consigned to go to the front. So I think he feels that he if we can wrap it up, he wants the eastern provinces. And as I said, if it were just land, we could make that deal. But it's not just land. There are people there, and there are people there who see themselves as Ukrainian, not Russian. So we shall see.
Fascinating discussion on all the nuances and drama to play out this week. Thank you, Bill Walton. Great to see you.
Yeah, great. Thanks.